Words on Fire, Chapter 41. When it became clear what was about to happen, I began fighting the soldier more fiercely than ever, more fiercely than I believed I was capable of fighting. Oddly, I didn't feel like myself in that moment, but rather I felt like Rue, the character from the stories that Lucas had told me all these months. I'd once been timid and fearful, but now I was much more like Rue, strong and confident and forceful. And if she would not give in to the fight, nor would I. I yanked my father's bag off my shoulder and swung it at the soldier's face. Water had filled the leather satchel now, so the smack against the jaw caused him to stumble enough that he loosened his grip on my arm. I wrenched free, but in doing so lost the bag, which floated downstream out of my reach. I dove for it and failed to notice the soldier had lunged for me, grabbing my arm again. This time his pistol was out. My gut twisted. I had no defense against that, and with the river more than waist deep, I couldn't fight him off again. Back away! The soldier raised his pistol, even while keeping a hold on me. But his head was up, speaking to someone else, someone ahead of him in the water. Who was it? Not Lucas. The last I'd seen him, he was on the bank of the river, some ways behind me. I said back away, the soldier repeated. The voice that answered became muffled against all the water splashing around me, but I did get a few bits of phrases. Would have been your commander. This is wrong. I will stop you by force if. That was the last I heard before the pistol fired and the soldier released me. Exhausted, half frozen, and choking on water, I drifted downstream, only vaguely aware that Lucas was shouting. Was it my name? It didn't sound like my name. Seconds later, someone pulled me from the water and dragged me back onto the riverbank, turning me to the side and pounding on my back to force the water from my lungs. You're so concerned with saving others that you never think to save yourself first. That was Ben's voice. I'm not letting you die here, so you get some air into your body, Audra, or else you start breathing. Hear me? I coughed out water and drew in air with it. Beautiful, breathable air. I lay there on my side until Ben's face came into focus, his expression grim. There are others downstream who will still need help. Ben pointed up the riverbank to some brush that somehow was still holding on to most of its leaves. Can you get up there to hide until this is over? Where's Lucas? I don't know. He jumped into the river to attack the man who was holding you. That's all I saw before I grabbed you. Then I had to do more than crawl to a hiding place. I had to find Lucas and make sure he was all right. While Ben went in one direction, I continued coughing out water, then staggered to my feet, bracing myself with anything I could find along the way to keep stumbling forward. The trouble at the church wasn't over. I heard cries and shouts everywhere around me, but I couldn't think about that. I had to find Lucas. I rounded the bend in the river and was relieved to see him kneeling on the bank, but not alone. A man lay in front of him and seemed to be bleeding. Lucas had his hands pressed over the wound, I realized. Wasn't this the officer that had just tried to drown me? Why would why would he? No, it wasn't. This was Officer Rusakov, Lucas's father, the man who tried to save me. He'd been the one shot by the pistol. I knelt beside Lucas. His father was alive and conscious, but bleeding from a wound in his leg. Let him. Let's get him into the forest, I said. Where we sent the others, I saw people go into the barn there. Rusakov shook his head. They won't take me in. They will, or we'll smuggle you in, I said. But we've got to get you somewhere to bind that injury, and we'll all become ill if we stay out here in these wet clothes. Together we helped Rusakov to his feet, then Lucas braced his father's weight while I kept watch ahead. Slowly, we made the trek into the patch of trees where a barn stood as silent as the night should have been. At first I wondered if anyone was in there. From the outside it looked as abandoned and quiet as before, but when I opened the doors I saw it filled with people. Their eyes widened in alarm seeing Rusakov with us, but Lucas said, "This is my father, and he saved our lives." They made way for us and let us lay Rusakov on the ground. Then a woman came forward and tore at her apron to create a bandage for his leg. Only then did I look around at who was in the barn with us. We had a little light filtered in through the slats to illuminate our barn, and I welcomed the sight of every person here. We hadn't saved all these people. Several of them must have escaped here on their own, though I noticed many injuries, some more serious than Lucas's father's. Tears streamed down their faces as they held one another and desperately looked out the barn windows in hope of seeing even one more person join us. Ben. I hoped if there was one more person, it might be Ben. We wanted we waited there for the rest of the night, huddled together for warmth until in the early morning hours the priest of the church entered the barn with only a small candle to guide him. His face was grim. How bad is it? One man asked. At least 150 arrests, the priest said. We'll appeal to the authorities for their release. I hope we'll have some success given what happened here tonight. But it wasn't only arrests, or else his face would not seem so pale and so haunted. What else? Lucas asked. It took the priest a long time to answer, but as gently as he could, he said, Some who tried to escape were recaptured and beaten. Another 30 or 40 are seriously injured from the initial attack. The priest drew in a deep breath as he looked around our solemn group, and we have at least 6 dead, driven into the river and drowned. The news was met with an eerie silence. No one moved or spoke, and if they cried, it was with silent tears and mouthed words of comfort, but no sounds. I vaguely realized Lucas's arm was around me, and I leaned my head on his shoulder to cry. I knew we were both thinking the same thing, that Ben had not returned, would not return, and he never did return. It felt like an entire month of silence passed before people began moving again, speaking again. I watched them as if through a fog, as if seeing each person through the same thick smoke that had brought them here in the first place. If only I could have lit the rest of our smoke bombs, or maybe one that lasted longer. If I'd done just a little more, maybe another 10 or 20 or 30 people could have gotten through it. Maybe more people might still be. I'm alive because of you. I looked up to see a woman staring down at me, her plump cheeks and kind smile reminding me of Milda. Tears still creased the corners of her eyes, but I wondered maybe a little gratitude was mixed in with her sorrow. The woman took my hand in hers and gave it a firm squeeze. You, dear girl, I don't know how you did what you did for us, but I'm alive because of it. We all are. Thank you, a man behind her echoed. He hoisted a young boy with curly hair into his arms, probably his son. Thanks from both of us. And from us, said a little girl who was standing with her arm around a woman I hadn't noticed earlier. Maybe her mother. We were among the first you pulled from the smoke. Thank you, a voice in back called, and then another voice repeated the words, and another. The sun broke through the loft window that morning to warm us, but it was nothing compared to the warmth bursting in my chest. Yes, we had losses, and yes, that night had given us a terrible tragedy, but once again my people had proven that we would never stop fighting, never stop resisting, and we would never forget who we were. The priest stepped toward me and smiled. You're the book carrier who does magic. I shook my head, aware that everyone had gone silent, waiting for my answer. Suddenly, I was that shy girl again, the one who never wanted to speak if there was any way to avoid it, the one who was certain she had nothing worthwhile to say. But I also knew that I'd been wrong before, staying silent when I had sometimes something important to say. I couldn't fade into the shadows, nor would I whisper my words to Lucas so that he could say them for me. The words in my mind had to be spoken by me. I don't do magic, I said. I do tricks that my father taught me. That was how he earned money for our family. But that wasn't his purpose in life, nor my mother's. My parents sacrificed everything they had, everything they loved, and maybe even their own lives for the true magic. It's our books, our language, our culture, our identities are inscribed in every word. As long as we have our books, we cannot be crushed. We cannot be forgotten. Because of our books, we will not be erased from our own history. We will remember who we are, all that we stand for, and all that we will fight for and continue fighting for until the day that we see the last Kozak soldier leave this land. If you want revenge for what they have done here, then tonight gather your family around you by the firelight and read, learn, create ideas of your own and spread them to others. It will be proof that we are winning. I finished speaking to warm embraces and more wishes of thanks, and Lucas leaning over and whispering into my ear that we had better leave while we still could. I nodded back at him. He was right. This had been the worst of nights, but morning had come, and we had work to do. That's the end of chapter 41.